As a man once said, oh no, when are Ipswich Town ever going to beat them? 14 years unbeaten, 13 derbies, the run continues. A 2-2 draw at Portman Road this afternoon. I want to laugh because it's been a really interesting build up to this derby. There's been a lot of people of an Ipswich persuasion, not all of them, but some of them who maybe felt it was a foregone conclusion. There's probably some on the yellow and green side who felt it was somewhat of a foregone conclusion. But as derby games often throw form out of the window, at least that's what they say, and Norwich have emerged with a point and that unbeaten run intact. Welcome to this week's edition of the PinkUn.com Norwich City podcast, sponsored by Coleman's of Norwich. I'm Connor Southwell, joined by Seaman, Paddy Davitt and Adam Harvey to reflect on an interesting afternoon in Suffolk at Portman Road. Paddy Davitt, the run goes on.
13 and counting, yeah. Very closely approaching the return of Carrow Road. Next April will be 15 years, give or take a week or two. And yeah, I mean, I wrote about it at the final whistle. The difference in mood, both with the sets of players and the fan base. Yes, I know it's 2-2 and it's a point apiece and honours even, but very clearly, who felt that was a good result and who didn't. And for the reasons you stated there, Connor, I'm pretty sure if you'd offered most Norwich fans 2-2 before a ball was kicked, they'd have taken it, no doubt about it, because it does keep those runs going now. And as you rightly say, it was very amusing after we got caught up in the blue action and inhaling blue smoke and what have you, flares before the game, that all of that ended in a rather forlorn lap of appreciation from their home players as the home stadium emptied pretty rapidly, and all you could hear at that point was those 2,000 or so Norwich fans saluting those players and coaching staff. And yeah, it's another one to add to the memorable East Anglian derbies from a Norwich perspective in the last 14, 15 years, although Kieran McKenna didn't agree, but we'll get into that in due course. One unsavory scene, which again we'll get into in terms of that stage managed team bus arrival scenario, but all in all a good day for anybody of a Norwich persuasion, yeah.
Jon Rowe was 5 years old the last time Ipswich Town beat Norwich. The iPad hadn't been invented. Instagram didn't exist. It's quite a remarkable run, and that Sam has been the source of great pride for Norwich City fans over a prolonged period. It's not been, and no one would ever pretend that it's been a wonderful season for the Canaries. 21 points, everyone can see the difference. But in a way, in a maybe sort of twisted sense, the fact that Ipswich Town have been as good as they have at home this season, they've prior to this game today won 9 of their 10 home games. Daniel Farke, of course, the manager, inflicting that defeat on them, and they still can't beat a Norwich side which has been, as we've said on various podcasts, not particularly great for a sustained period of this season.
Yeah, they feel even more invincible after that result, don't they? I think one of the lines that's been giving me a little bit of hope going into this game is just that Norwich just don't lose to Ipswich, and it felt like that was really the time for that to come to an end. There was certainly a feeling from Ipswich fans and players and staff and everyone associated with that club clearly felt that this was an absolutely huge opportunity. And as much as coaches like to play down history, Wagner did that in his own press conference, that would have been on everyone's mind, and to manage to secure that result was all they really needed to do to give those fans an incredible moment. And although the context around that is quite sad, that Norwich have found themselves celebrating a point at Portman Road when, as Kieran McKenna highlighted post-match, they were in the Premier League 18 months ago when Ipswich were in League One, just within the context of how the team is doing on the pitch. I'm delighted for those fans, because after all, they don't have any control over the sayings or any control over the decisions made in the football department, any control over what happens on the pitch. The only thing they can do is respond to what's given to them, and the situation they find themselves in is supporting a team that were massive underdogs going into this game, and that were really, really pleased if they were able to come away with a point. So those fans went to the game knowing it would have been a really tough ask to go and do that, and to be fair to them, got right behind their team from minute one. There was no consideration whatsoever of the long-term position or what grievances they might have with the football club at large, despite the fact that a minority of people had even said to me when I'd spoken to them about the game that it might be the best result for Norwich in the long term for them to go and lose it. There wasn't an ounce of a suggestion that those fans weren't going to support their team from minute one, and even when they went behind, they provided a little bit of ammunition to go and get the equaliser as quick as Jonathan Rowe did towards the end of that first half. So although we'll come on to obviously the footballing elements of the game, we'll analyse it and things, my first emotion from that, to be honest, was a little bit of jealousy from those in the sort of away fans, and it was one of those where, you know, I don't know if you and Adam felt the same way, but as a journalist, probably for the first time since I started, given well, when I started they were already relegated a year and a half ago, and it was the first time since then that I've actually thought it would have been nice to sort of to be a fan for that one, to be honest. So I am actually really pleased for them, because it's been a barren old period for Norwich City supporters, and that's a moment that I think their support has deserved. So we'll see where things go from there. We'll see what it means, and we'll obviously break that down. But just in the here and now, I think it's worth highlighting how pleasing it is to see them in that position, because that is a big moment when you take in the context.
Yeah, and like you say, that there hasn't been much relative to cheer this season, really, in terms of performances or encouraging signs. And if you can't cheer the fact that you've retained a long unbeaten run in the East Anglian derby, if that was snatched away from them as well, goodness me, it would have marked, I guess, what this campaign has been. Adam, it was. I found myself sitting there, probably feeling quite amused for a lot of the game, but in a good sense, in that I had this really bad vision. I kind of told you lads about it, building up to this game and travelling to this game as well, of Ipswich scoring early and the floodgates opening. I think it's fair to say Norwich were a lot more competitive than everybody who was going into this fixture probably imagined. Is that fair?
Yeah, I sort of felt from the sort of build up to the game, and you can see it from, you know, outside. We had to walk through it. Sort of the emphasis and the expectation almost amongst the home fans that they were going to get the win today. The noise before the game was quite deafening, to be honest. That's the loudest I've ever heard Portman Road, and I've been to quite a few derbies down the years, because you could feel it, almost what you get at Carrow Road in kind of previous years, where you're the team expected to win. Norwich usually deliver on that. Of course, Ipswich have failed to do so today. And yeah, you sort of felt from minute one, you know, Ipswich had a lot of possession, but they weren't really creating anything. And I felt Norwich were frustrating it, you know, the home crowd a little bit, and then they get the lead, and you think, okay, here we go, like this could be a killer blow. And as soon as they got the equaliser, it just kind of, I don't know, almost like you could hear a pin drop inside Portman Road. It kind of completely silenced the home fans, and then particularly the way they then started the second half to go ahead. And I mean, like, we had quite a rowdy bunch of Ipswich fans where the press box is, sort of in relation to, and they kind of really started to turn on Ipswich. You know, you'd almost sort of think that Ipswich was sort of at the bottom of the league, and they were sort of losing every week the way they were sort of almost against their team at points. And I thought, you know, Norwich have really done well here to really ride that initial sort of crowd expectation and almost turn it completely and flip it the other way. Of course, it unfortunately couldn't hold on to the lead, but yeah, I think from a Norwich City fan perspective, that's the way they controlled the first 15, 20, 30 minutes of the game, I thought was absolutely spot on. And for me, that probably played into the result in the end, because, you know, as you alluded to, I think if they'd have conceded one early on, that probably could have been almost similar levels to what the dominance that Norwich have had down the years, because their players would have then been right riled up for it. And I think Norwich, you know, given the way that we've seen it this season, when they've gone behind at points, they really tend to find it hard to come back. So, big moment, and a big game. And yeah, I thought actually as well, you know, note for the Norwich fans, I thought they stuck with their team right through it. Even when they were 1-0 down, you could still hear them really fully behind the team. And of course, that's a huge motivator for all them Norwich players out on the pitch today.
Yeah, agreed. And, you know, as we've done this podcast in recent weeks and spoke about kind of criticism that the fans have had to take from certain people, and maybe the division that's existed within the club. I think actually if you'd have seen the away end and the players and the staff on the pitch at the end for once, and maybe for the first time in a long time, that felt like a real sense of togetherness, and that's what a Derby Day result can do. And, you know, the fact it was away from home against a formidable Ipswich side at home who have scored goals at will, and taken points at will this season. It's the second best Championship start behind Leicester City. So those two have been phenomenal. The fact that Norwich City have been able to go there and take 2 points off, or a point, and mean that they dropped 2 points is impressive. Someone who doesn't share that view, Kieran McKenna. It's interesting because he's always struck me as quite a cool, calm, calculated figure. Some interesting quotes, which I'll read a selection of from the post-match interview that he did, or the press conference that he did. I won't do a Northern Irish accent. I thought about it, but I won't do it. I thought we were the best team by a considerable margin. We'd have loved to give our fans the victory. They, Norwich, scored from 2 aimless balls into our box. And then the killer last quote: Norwich were operating in the Premier League 18 months ago, but at the end their fans were celebrating a draw. That tells you how far we've come. I hope he gets some chips to go with his salt this evening, Paddy Davitt.
Yeah, it was a very strange attack, but probably hints at the frustration because, as we said, as we felt, as we saw before the game, that this had been built up to their D-Day, really, wasn't it? This was the day that the pain ended and they set the record straight and just reaffirmed that it's two clubs moving in opposite directions, 21 points on the pitch prior to a ball being kicked. And that wasn't the script that ended up being the case. And sadly for the blue side, more of the same. Draw, not a defeat, but it feels like a defeat, I'm sure. And maybe there was a sense of that in his comments. I'd only take issue with considerably the better team. Yes, they had more possession. Yes, they dominated the territory as you would have expected. The style of play that they impose on teams who come to Portman Road. But look at the shots on target. They had 5. Norwich had 3. So that's not considerably better where it matters for me. I can't remember Angus Gunn, which I felt before the game he'd have to, having an absolute worldie. I mean, there was
one at the end, wasn't there, from Broadhead, which was a cracking save.
But that's the only one I can recall. We didn't have a lot of chance with either of the 2 goals, very good finishes. But that tells me again that were they considerably better? Well, if Norwich's keeper hasn't had to, pull out a show reel of fine stops, then no is the answer. So I think that's the first time I've come across him in the flesh, so we'll probably just chalk that one off to a bit of frustration, but I don't think it did him any favours particularly. I mean, if he's questioning why did Norwich come and show them the respect of kind of almost knowing they'd be the aggressors and trying to nullify them and stop them and maybe probe on the counter, then take it as a mark of respect rather than some sort of slight, because it's a testament to what Ipswich have done this season, what he has engineered over the last 2 seasons, that teams will turn up at Portman Road particularly now and do that and try and stop and try and nullify Ipswich because they know how good they are at home, which again just underlines what an excellent result that was from the Norwich perspective today. So yeah, it'll be interesting now. I mean, they've got not that we want to go down an Ipswich tangent, but I think that coming up now over the festive period, they've got Leeds, they've got Leicester. So if that's a hint of maybe pressure as much as frustration is just starting to seep in a little bit, then let's see where they are beyond these next 2 games, because it's only going to get harder and tougher from here for Ipswich if they're going to seal this deal and build on what is an unbelievable start and get the job done and get themselves to the Premier League. So I'll certainly be an interested observer in how McKenna handles himself as much as what he does with his team. There's no disputing he's clearly a very highly rated and an up-and-coming manager. We spoke to a guy who is part of Ipswich's media and comms team, used to work with us, and he basically used one word to describe McKenna: genius. He said, you look down that Ipswich team sheet, none of those are particularly outstanding players. Even uncharitably mentioned 1 or 2 are League 2 players, but McKenna has instilled in them this belief individually and collectively that they can duel it out with a Leicester, with a Southampton, with a Leeds. So he's a tremendous coach, clearly, and he's probably destined for bigger and better things in Ipswich, no disrespect, but I don't think that really became him to come in and almost sneeringly dismiss Norwich and Norwich's efforts today. It didn't really do many favours in my view.
No, I would agree, but and I think you're right. It points to this sort of deeper sense of frustration that I think you get from the Ipswich side of things, which is understandable. It's been a long time, as we've documented, since they last won this game. But everything around this fixture meant that it should have been the day that they beat Norwich. The form, everything about their progress in the last 2 years, and everything that they've done since Kieran McKenna's taken over, and their takeover, of course, from the American owners, and you got that sense walking around Portman Road with, the flares greeting the coach and all of that.
I'm about to be attacked. For anybody who's watching this, I'm just hearing this noise. It's like sellotape unpicking from this board, which will mean nothing if you're listening to this on audio, but please have a look on YouTube.
We've got an inflatable canary
Captain
with
Canary is very close to
he's
my
festive.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. I was noting, actually, he looked like, when we walked in tonight, he was noticeably perkier and more upright.
I took it and I thought I'd adjust it based on the mood.
Yeah.
Try and get it a bit more excited.
But if it lands on my head halfway through the broadcast, then we know why.
Yeah, what was the point I was making? So it was. It was. Everything around this game pointed it to it being Ipswich's time, their time to beat Norwich, their time to prove, as you said, Paddy, that the clubs were going in opposite directions, and the fact they haven't. I'm sure. In fact, you can take stock of social media and sense the we weren't that fussed anyway. It's like, well, you closed a few roads and were waving flares around, and I don't get the sense that wasn't the case. But it probably goes to show the success that Norwich frustrated them today, Sam. I mean, as a performance, I don't think it was particularly pretty. They weren't that great in possession. They struggled at points to get the ball up the pitch and get themselves up the pitch. They didn't really get, ironically, Jon Rowe and Sainz into the game. And on huge occasions, obviously they got Rowe in the game twice, and brilliant stuff, and we'll speak about him shortly. But it does just, and I guess this is probably why there's a lot of smiles and a lot of goading from the Norwich City side, because, as we said, as good as they've been, they still haven't been able to beat Norwich City. For all of their progress, it's the one box that, and obviously they'll get a chance later on in the season, but it's the one box at the moment that remains unticked.
Yeah, I think there's maybe a 50-50 divide between that attitude that you suggested of, oh, well, we weren't that bothered anyway, and are you lot celebrating a 2-2 draw and sort of taking McKenna's point in that sense. So yeah, it's quite interesting to see how the Ipswich side have maybe coped with this result. As you say, they obviously will have a chance in April, and that's the beauty of a season. I think Wagner said going into it, it's a good thing that you have 2 every season, and I don't know if that was him trying to decrease the pressure on his team going into this one, but I think if he could have a season now where maybe they get to avoid that Carrow Road fixture and the record goes on maybe indefinitely, I think maybe he would have taken that, and probably a lot of Norwich fans, especially the sort of glass half empty ones, might have taken that. But yeah, as you say, it's the box that's unticked, and I wrote a column going into the game that this is the one thing that's really keeping the club and its fans tethered to the sort of glory years of recent times. Of course, they've got a couple of players. It's pretty much literally a couple of players now, isn't it? Kenny McLean, Grant Hanley.
Onel Hernandez.
Onel Hernandez, yeah. Obviously, Angus Gunn has played in the derby before, but was only there on loan in a season where Norwich finished 14th. So they've not got too many players who are associated with the good times. They've not really got any semblance in the way that they play of those sorts of sides that Norwich fans have been, so excited by and galvanised by. So this record really was the only sign of how good things have been in the recent history of Norwich City. In fact, if you look at what that 14-year time period stretches over, that's the time when it really turned, isn't it? That's when Norwich went from being a mid-table, semi-relevant championship side. That was when they then started kicking on and became champions of League One, and went up from there really, and established themselves as a team that a lot of supporters up and down the country saw as, at least a yo-yo team, if not a Premier League team at times over that period. And there's nothing really, not even the badge is the same as it was back then. So this run, I felt going into it, was the only thing Norwich fans had to point to associate themselves and the club with those glorious times. And you felt maybe that was going to be completely severed if they lost to Ipswich today. So in a sense, I think that made it quite a lot bigger. It probably was also the marker Ipswich were hoping to use to show that they've maybe advanced in the narrative between the two clubs. I think Wes Burns actually referenced it post-match, even though he did talk about the disappointment at not ending that record. I think he tried to turn it a little bit and say, oh, well, the narrative has changed, and this is a club that's maybe doing slightly better than their rivals. But make no doubt about it, everybody associated with that football club wanted a clear, tangible sign that Ipswich have now moved above Norwich. And although you can look at the table, and we have heard that 21 points stat quite a few times since the full-time whistle went, you can't point to an Ipswich victory over Norwich in that time. And maybe they do even go up, and that Carrow Road meeting is their only chance. And we were actually speaking afterwards, that might even be funnier if Ipswich managed to get themselves out of the division and maybe avoid a match with Norwich for a while without beating them. So that would definitely be an interesting thread to follow. I don't want to immediately turn attentions to April, because I think we could all do without that anxiety for a little bit. But I think it will be an interesting story to follow now that there's not this sort of D-Day. We talked about it in an Ipswich sense, but that was also true about Norwich in a negative way. There were a lot of people, everyone I've spoken to for sort of the last 2 months, especially when talking about Wagner's future, has been saying they don't think he's going to be able to get a result out of the derby, and that's why they think he should go. So this has been looming large on the horizon in quite a scary sense for fans and for the club. So to get that out of the way, to navigate it without defeat, I think will be, as much as it was pleasing to see, it's probably more a sense of relief. And in the long term, I think that relief will probably come to define that moment mainly, rather than the joy that probably fans are feeling at the moment. So I think it gives a lot of people a lot more room to work with. But yes, it's not job done, is it? So we'll see about that. But for now, Ipswich fans haven't had their golden moment, and it's probably worth also mentioning that even if they do it in April, they had the chance to do it in front of 27,000 of their own fans today, and they won't get that chance in April. So it could be a long while again until the Portman Road crowd actually see their side beat Norwich. So it was a massive missed opportunity for them, but the worse that is for them, the more I'm sure Norwich fans will revel in it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure their Carrow Road record is even worse. I think you have to go back to February 2006 for the last time they won at Carrow Road, if what I'm looking at is right, and I think it is, which maybe documents the point around opportunity that they will feel they have missed. Let's talk a little bit about what happened before the game, because there were some unsavoury stuff, as there always were with derbies, and obviously I'm sure people will have seen by now, Delia Smith and Michael Wynne-Jones, Norwich City's joint majority shareholders, made their way into Portman Road. I don't know how it ended up the way it did, but I think they seemed to follow the Ipswich coach in, and were met with idiots who decided they were going to throw things at their car and just act in a really silly, needless way, and cross that line between rivalry and stupidity, I guess. And it's a real shame, Adam, because what we saw on the pitch was a really good, entertaining game of football, 4 goals. I'm sure neutrals watching that, as painstaking as it was for everyone with an attachment to either side. I'm sure as a neutral, it was a really good watch, and stuff like that. And again, we would be condoning it if it was Norwich fans, and I'm sure don't know at this point kind of arrest figures and all of that kind of stuff. But that's not to say Norwich fans have been perfect. I'm sure they haven't, but it's just really unnecessary and pretty sad to see, really, for 2 people who are in their 80s.
Yeah, I mean, you can show passion, you can wear your heart on your sleeve as a football fan, and obviously that's what derbies are there for. They're there to, sort of make the, sort of the mast, your mast in the sand, and say, look, this is the team I support, and back your team from minute 1 to minute 90. But before and after the game, it's a lot of it is just completely needless stuff. And I think, as I've seen it pointed out on social media, it's 2 8-year-olds, Norwich City owners going to a game, just leave it be. Let them go to the stadium. You've already had all the atmosphere, blue action stuff before the game with your own team coach. Back your own team. Don't worry about two Norwich City owners who are are not young. Let's be real. So just needless stuff, and it really does kind of leave a bit of a sour taste in the mouth for, I suppose, the other supporters of that team that have had to then look on social media after the game, and you sometimes see it where it's almost like they all get grouped into one bubble when they're really not. It's just a couple of individuals who have had a really stupid moment or whatever it might be, or they've just decided to take it to the next level, and hopefully they'll get punished in the correct way. And I think David Wagner actually summed it up perfectly in his post-match, saying there is a few idiots in the world, and hopefully they have to suffer the consequences of their actions in the future. And then if they don't get the opportunity maybe to return to the Carrow Road game where they might their team might put in a performance and actually finally get a victory over Norwich, so they might have even lost that opportunity. So it's just really sort of from their side a really poor sort of showing. It doesn't do them any favours, but as you alluded to, we're not obviously aware of any issues with Norwich fans today, but there might have been. But on the whole, I think before and after a game, just behave yourself, enjoy the 90 minutes on the pitch, and then let the best team win. And of course today it was neither team. It was a draw, which probably felt more like a win from the Norwich City perspective.
Yeah, and as you alluded to earlier, I mean, I think Sam, you maybe a bit later because you were speaking to Norwich fans, but I mean we were caught in the middle really of that kind of activity with the coaches, and irrespective of what you thought of it, and maybe to quote Ipswich manager Mick McCarthy, that went well. Most of the people there were well mannered and well-intentioned, and that would have been 99% of those Ipswich fans who were greeting their team coach. I think Norwich's coach took a slightly different route, 3-minute drive, David Wagner said, so I don't know where they were coming from, I presume a hotel, but he was pretty strong on it, wasn't he, Paddy? And again, it's a shame because I'm sure nationally now, and in fact I know nationally because we've seen a few stories on it, it feels like something that may well become kind of the story out of this derby from a non-footballing perspective, which is a real shame considering, as we mentioned, the atmosphere inside Portman Road was really good to start with from both sets of fans, and kind of peaked and troughed as games do. But it's maybe a shame that we're having to discuss it on the podcast, and I'm sure other people will be discussing it elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, so nothing really more to add to what's already been said. I mean, it's a societal issue, really, but it manifested itself in a football match today. You go on social media, you see people who will have a healthy debate and a dialogue and constructive from both sides. In this case, two football teams, rival football teams, but then there's always people who will take it too far on social media. And I saw a few inappropriate comments from Norwich fans, if I'm honest, on social media towards just Sir Alf Ramsey, which is totally unacceptable as well. Stupidity doesn't wear club colours ultimately, and unfortunately, it's not a great look for Ipswich. Sorry, and actually, I've not checked since we got back and started recording whether they've officially put anything out, to condemn that behaviour. I'm sure they will do because, like Ipswich, like Norwich, they are a community-rooted club, and that very much is what they're about. You got that sense in and around the stadium that the fan base have reconnected with their football club, and all sorts of different demographics were present, and that really is it seems what's propelling that football club forward, along with astute people in certain positions, i.e. McKenna, but and maybe above him as well. But to be besmirched by the actions of, as David Wagner said, idiots, and a handful of idiots as well. But I mean, we walked through that, and there were thousands there, and even within that, you could see there was sort of groups of individuals who probably did want to take it a bit further than just welcoming their team and maybe giving anybody in a Norwich sort of scenario in that pre-match mix a very volatile welcome. So yeah, we'll see how that plays out. Whether the police, I'm sure, will have to get involved. Whether Ipswich themselves will have to get involved. And identify the people in, which is going to be difficult if it was just in a throng of thousands. We wasn't actually physically there to witness that. We've obviously only seen the report subsequently, but there's pictures. I think Press Association have pictures of a beer can resting on the roof, on the bonnet of their car. So pictures of Delia looked clearly shaken when she emerged from her vehicle. David Wagner, just before he came in to speak to us post-match, said I think the configuration of where the media room is to the directors, it's almost along the same corridor in that main stand, and he had actually been stopped on his way to the media and spoken to Delia and spoken to Michael and said they were fine. But you know, rivalry, friendly rivalry, fair enough on the pitch, in the stands, but that's crossed the line, and that's unacceptable behaviour, and it does nobody any favours. And sadly, that's why we've had to spend the last 5-10 minutes of this talking about something which should be an irrelevance. You know, you shouldn't go to a football game and feel the need to throw a beer can at a car. I mean, what is all about? It's mindless. It's mindless behaviour, but unfortunately, there'll be one or two who clearly got carried away by, you know, what was a very well-intentioned reception that they did before, didn't they, towards the end of last season, I think, for the Exeter game, and they won 6-0, was it? So, you know, why one or two should have to spoil it for the majority, I don't know. But as I say, I think for me, it's more of a societal issue that you do have those elements. You see it across the game now. There's this disorder clearly feels like it's on the rise, and we could get into that in this completely separate podcast, but it does feel that both inside and outside stadia now there are, you know, certain individuals who want to go and not just go and watch their team play, but maybe get involved in, you know, elements like this or episodes like this. So sad, but there you go. That's the world we live in.
Terry Alcock, Peter Mendham, Andy Johnson, Leon McKenzie, Ewan Roberts, Malky Mackay, Temi Pukki, and now Jon Rowe, all members of the Derby Day Double Club. And the irony is, Sam, I don't think he played that well, but derbies are about moments, and goodness me, does Jon Rowe know how to produce a moment, and two of them as well. We've spoken earlier on about the importance of the equaliser, putting Norwich City ahead as well, and I guess it's 11 goals for him before Christmas. Personally, but also for the team, massive moments from a player who's proving himself to be massive for David Wagner's team.
Yeah, I think David Wagner actually said post-match that he thought in general play it wasn't his best game, but Norwich basically had 2 or 3 clear chances in the game and they scored 2 of them. So yeah, that was really pleasing to see. He's obviously got a clinical edge. I actually thought to have the wherewithal about him having just leaped in the air for an overhead kick to then jump up and volley it into the corner when the ball popped back up to him was actually a very good finish and a good bit of calm in a game that, you know, judging by his social media posts and the way that he celebrated after his 2 goals, it was a game he was definitely very pumped up for. So I think it demonstrated that sort of knack that he has, and Wagner alluded to the idea that he's one of those players that even though he's not a striker, he's got that sort of sense of where to be when the ball's in and around the box, and he's profited from that a number of times this season. Even if you include the Sheffield Wednesday game in the week, I don't think that was his best game either, but he obviously scores a vital goal to seal the 3 points in that one, and now we're looking at 180 of probably his least eventful minutes this season, and he's produced 3 goals in that time. So his clinical nature and the way that he's taken the chances that he has this season have probably contributed quite a lot to the team being where it is, because you look at their defensive record, if they hadn't been able to keep up with it goal scoring wise, they would be in real significant trouble. But they have got a really good record at the other end, and obviously with 11 of those goals, he's contributed to that significantly. I think I saw a stat a few weeks ago, and this was even before obviously his goal scoring exploits of this week. He was well outperforming his XG, and although over a really short sample period that might be a little bit of a worry, and it suggests that maybe Norwich aren't creating the chances that they should be, and that it won't be sustainable. When you get to this sort of sample of scoring 11 goals, going nearly halfway through the season, it does suggest that actually he's just a really clinical finisher, and that's the part of his game that probably isn't going away. When you looked at the early signs of him in a Norwich shirt, and it was just a very raw, speedy, excited young winger, I don't think many could have predicted the the outcome in terms of his finishing and his cool head in the box, but that's an element of his game that he obviously has either always had or has been able to add. And from listening to the way that Wagner's been speaking all season, he still feels he's got levels to go through, and you'd suggest that if he does find those levels, it probably won't be at Norwich, or it will be followed by a swift departure. So yeah, I think he underlined how important of a player he was, that you barely even saw what he was about. You didn't see any real jinking runs or combinations with Jack Stacey, as have populated his season so far. But still, he's the man who's got his name on the score sheet twice, and he's still made the difference for Norwich. So he's very, very quickly made himself an absolutely vital part of this team. And it probably shows you how much he's forced himself into that 11, that Wagner going into this game, I'm sure, would have been tempted, having seen his sort of comfort selection at times. I'm sure there was a thought going through his head at some point or another that maybe he just goes with Fastnacht and Hernandez and he trusts them, and he goes with maybe the players he feels are tactically a little bit more mature and might offer him more defensively. But credit to Borja Sainz as well for his contribution in the week. Both of those two players have forced Wagner into that selection, really. He couldn't do anything else. Whereas you look at Sheffield Wednesday, that was a real big opportunity for Sainz, and you feel a bit like if he didn't take it, maybe we would have seen Hernandez in that team. And although obviously Sainz didn't have his name in the same places that Rowe will after those goals, he won't be in the headlines, and he wasn't on the score sheet, didn't get an assist or anything. I actually thought he was a driving force in more of Norwich's attacks than Rowe was. There was definitely more attacks down that left side throughout the game than there was down the right, and it did feel like actually at times, especially in the first half, that if that moment was to come, it probably would be through Sainz. So I think, although there were a few players who had very good games, and I don't know if we're going to come on to those, but it was throughout the team there were quite a few good performances and individual steps forward. But I thought the wingers in particular really highlighted how much they can do for Norwich. I think at times it also highlighted maybe the lack of a plan going forward. It feels like Norwich, even though it doesn't work all the time and there are individual errors, it feels to me like there is a lot of work going into the defensive side of things and the tactical preparations for that. But at times it feels a little bit like when they go forward, sort of give it to the wingers and let them try and create moments and try and score individual goals. And there have been too many goals coming from individual brilliance, and obviously the more of those you can have, the better that is. But maybe too high of a percentage of those Norwich goals have come from those moments. So you'd like to see them maybe decrease that reliance a little bit. But just in terms of the quality of player, I think the way that Sainz and Rowe have applied themselves this week is really encouraging, and probably shows you where, aside from Josh Sargent, who obviously has been cast as this sort of hero ever since his injury, that's where you could maybe see this improvement coming from if Norwich are to kick on and make the most of this recent momentum to maybe try and push themselves back in the playoff picture.
We had this sort of weird situation post-game where we were speaking to Jon Rowe whilst a lot of the Norwich fans were still in the away end. So speaking to someone whilst nearly 2,000 people are serenading him is not an experience that I've had before, but was quite enjoyable, and I think he was enjoying it as well. I mean, the list I've mentioned there, Adam, obviously Grant Holt got a hat-trick as well. I don't want to leave him out of it. That's quite significant. But of those players who have scored 2 goals in derbies, Temi Pukki, Ewan Roberts, Malky Mackay, Leon McKenzie famously as well. I mean, you do this and you get remembered, as we've listed. I mean, Jon Rowe now, irrespective of where his career goes, where his Norwich City career goes as well, he's created a real moment for himself that he's going to be remembered by for years and for decades to come through today and the goals that he scored.
Yeah, I actually thought the club's video yesterday they put out before the game was pretty spot on. You sort of looked back at some of the memories and some of the players that have scored in the derbies, and you do remember it. I met a friend last night and we were just talking about players that we remember scoring in derbies. Cameron Jerome, Jacob Murphy, players that you wouldn't necessarily think of straight away when you say oh, who's your favourite all-time Norwich City players. I'm not sure Jacob Murphy would necessarily fit on anyone's list, but that moment he provided, you remember it. Jon Rowe is going to be one of them. He didn't only just score one, he scored two. And to have, as Sam said, 11 goals at this stage of the season. I mean, he's only 20 as well. I think that's something that probably gets forgotten about. He's still a young man. He's got a lot of development in his game to go, and I think he's going to reach a lot higher heights than the Championship. And I think when you look back at someone like James Maddison scored in this fixture. He got 15, 16 goals in the Championship and went for big money as a young Englishman. And I think Jon Rowe's probably the next cab off the rank to sort of follow suit. And who knows, maybe one day reach the heights of an England squad, or I think that he's probably banned for those kind of levels. So for him personally as well, to come through the academy here, he's had a difficult upbringing by all accounts, and lots of things in his life maybe haven't gone the way he'd have liked. To sort of now break into a team that he would have worked so hard through the academy to get this opportunity, and then to score two in the biggest fixture in any Norwich City's fans' mind, particularly at their place as well. I think to do it in Ipswich's own backyard, to score twice, especially the second one. I think being right in front of the away fans and the celebrations running over to the 2,400 plot or whatever it was, Norwich City fans, and just the celebrations, and you could hear it after the game as well. All the chants towards him, the love towards him, and he's just such a likeable figure. I think that's what makes it even better. He's such a down to earth guy who just loves playing football, and you can see the confidence and the freedom in his game of just a man who's enjoying himself at the moment, and long may that continue, because even if the season doesn't pan out the way that Norwich want it to, trying to reach the objective of the club, in making the playoffs, they've got a player there who has provided some moments this season, which I'm sure Norwich fans can cling on to in what's been a difficult season. And today was one of them moments which, if we get to April, May time and Norwich haven't achieved their goals, Norwich fans will still look back at this game with a lot of fond memories as another one in the long list of Norwich City games against Ipswich, which they're unbeaten in. And of course, if they get to the Carrow Road game, things might have even changed by then. Ipswich might have fallen a bit away from where they are, and Norwich might have had Sargent back and done some good business in January, and they're propelling themselves up the table. So that could be a completely different game. So this one felt like the one that maybe might have been the one that Ipswich actually got the better of Norwich, and Jon Rowe made sure that wasn't the case.
He did indeed, and all of those things you listed, as well as being an academy player as well. So I kind of asked him about it. This is a derby that he's experienced at academy level, never at senior level, and I think he was still a bit. I don't think it had quite sunk in yet what he'd done at that point, and just how memorable that's going to be. So I hope it's sunk in for him now. It's two really well taken goals for different reasons, and actually on a wider point, that's kind of what's been pleasing about all of his goals this season. They've all been slightly different. He scored headers, he scored from outside the box, he scored from inside the box, scrappy goals like the first one today. He's shown a range of qualities inside the box, which is really good. Now, if you're watching, you will know that hopefully you'll know that we are sponsored by Coleman's of Norwich. Now, I was in a supermarket the other day, and I was surprised to learn it's not just mustard they do. Coleman's. They broadened themselves out to other condiments. Mint sauce in particular was one that I saw.
Got some in the cupboard.
You're a mint sauce fan?
I am actually. To be fair, I forgot it was in the cupboard. I went the other day to get some soup out of the cupboard for my lunch, and
what
there,
soup?
I think what did I have the other day? I think I had chicken and veg the other day. Very nice. Wasn't Coleman's, but pulled it out. There was the mint sauce, which is a regular theme when it comes to lamb in our household. So I'm not sure it'll be used over Christmas. I don't think there's any lamb being cooked, but certainly come back to Easter, Coleman's will be on the table, or any time before that. We have a roast on a Sunday with lamb. So not only good mustard, but certainly good mint sauce.
Yeah, so if you're not a fan of mustard, other condiments of Coleman's are available. I don't know if they do a cranberry sauce at this time of year. That would be ideal. That's what you want, isn't it, with your turkey? But it leads us nicely onto our bring the heat section of the show, which I was slightly fearful we wouldn't be able to do, but we can do it in the way that's unfolded. I'm going to go first, just to give you boys a little bit of time to think about it, as well as mint sauce and all the. Not quite. I think I'm throwing in a bit of a curveball. Okay. I'm going to say the referee, who was Josh Smith. Yeah, I'm saying he allowed the heat because I thought we had a good game today. You can see referees in derby games sometimes be quite card happy, be quite whistle happy, but I thought he let a lot of it flow. I think you'll have to get some sort of UEA scientists to look into how Ashley Barnes didn't get booked in that game for some of the tackles, but just thought he managed the game really well, and they're always difficult occasions to manage. So he maybe didn't bring the heat, but I think he allowed the heat to exist in the occasion. So that's who I'm going to go for. Mr. Sam Seaman?
Ball science. Sorry. Just for the celebration for the first goal, obviously he will have been involved in some pretty intense games, I would think, at Chesterton last season, just because I don't know if they've got a big derby, but we know how partisan and how passionate those Turkish fans can be. So I'm sure he was used to quite an intimidating atmosphere, and he probably could shrug it off at Portman Road a little bit. But he also looked like somebody who has had a little bit of practice rubbing it in against some home support that maybe weren't expecting or hoping for him to do so well. He was the first one after that equaliser went in to get to the corner flag, to give it right to those Ipswich fans. And although I'm sure I would have been incensed if I was one of them, looking at it from the Norwich side, he was definitely bringing the heat, and it was nice to see a little bit of Norwich giving it back after Ipswich had 40 minutes of things going their way mostly. So yeah, I'd go for Sainz.
And actually, before you boys give your answers, Norwich fans in the away end, they were very pleased to receive these Coleman's festive scarves, which was nice. There was one of them quite symbolically laying on the roof at Portman Road, which I guess had been lost in the celebrations. But yeah, that was good to see. Paddy, who bought the heat for you?
That was exactly the answer I was going to give. Borja Sainz's celebration, but that corner actually of Portman Road. When Liam Gibbs came out, and we know his family connection. 21 today, happy birthday. That'll be an interesting dynamic in the Gibbs house tonight with his old man, who's a true blue by all accounts. And that's what that pocket of Ipswich fans, when he came out to warm up down that area, I can't remember the exact wording, but it was,
"Your dad's not proud of you."
Your dad's not proud of you, yeah, which is a bit hurtful on a boy's 21st birthday, but hopefully he feels he's had the last laugh. I'm sure, he was definitely in the celebrations when those goals were scored, and at the end as well. So, as we know, I think Adam might have referenced it last week, the Carrow Road home games when he's warmed up, and the chant was, "If you hate Ipswich, clap your hands," and Liam Gibbs has joined in there. So, yeah, certainly going to be a very interesting birthday party in the Gibbs house tonight.
You'd like to be around their Christmas table, wouldn't you, for Christmas dinner?
What with the mint sauce and the yeah, absolutely, yeah. But I thought that was, I'm sure he took it in the spirit it was delivered, but that was quite a stinging response from fans who probably thought he was the next big thing coming through the academy. So there you go, plates have shifted.
Oh, your dad's not. That's not very nice, is it? It's not very nice. Adam,
I want to go with the Norwich fans at the final whistle. 14 years, Norwich City. It was a brilliant picture, because you could just see all the Ipswich fans flooding out of the stand nearest to the away end, and the Norwich fans in full voice, absolutely loving life that they've effectively spoiled Ipswich's cup final day. So beautiful scenes at the end, and I thought that was certainly bringing the heat and proving the point that we are the pride of Anglia, and despite Ipswich's uprising turn of form, and they can talk about history all they like, Norwich will, based on the record in the derby at the moment, we're still firmly the pride of Anglia.
There you go.
I'll tell you how many times I've heard that song, by the way. I went out to speak to the fans after. Literally just it was like there was a new wave.
How many years is it?
14. It's 14 now. But literally, like I was trying to speak to people. It was the most difficult I've had it since I started doing it. But it was, like every 10 seconds, it felt like there was a pocket of 6 or 7 coming out of the turnstiles singing it. So
I just really wanted you to know.
yeah, well, everybody can go to the YouTube channel, which they hopefully already are at watching this podcast. But yeah, and they'll definitely be in no doubt. I was left in absolutely no doubt whatsoever by the end of that. So yeah, I know that song very well by now.
Yes, indeed. Paddy, we kind of spoke about it earlier, but Angus Gunn, he deserves a mention, doesn't he, for that save at the end. For as much as we talk about Jon Rowe's goals, which are going to be the thing that, as we mentioned, he's joined a pretty exclusive club full of some really big Norwich City names. But that was a point save for Norwich City, wasn't it? It ensured that they left Portman Road with a point from Angus Gunn.
And they will say the mark of a good keeper is in a game where, maybe for 90 minutes you've not had a huge amount to do. Obviously concentration, what have you, distribution, maybe with your ball at your feet. But to pull a save out like that, where, to go right back to what we were discussing, for all McKenna's narrative, I don't think he was having to be necessarily, producing saves left, right and centre, but that was at a critical moment. There's no coming back if that goes in. He's gone full stretch, and he's a big lad, as we know, so he's needed the entirety of his frame just to push that around. And bizarrely, it looked like even then, there was two Ipswich players at the back post who were going to slot the rebound, but I don't know, obviously from where our vantage, clearly the angle wasn't conducive, but that was a big moment, and if anybody knows in that yellow and green camp what it means to keep Ipswich at bay in terms of this East Anglian dynamic, it's that man, and it's the old man, and it's that family. So great for him, because it would have meant a lot for him today. You can guarantee it. And it was interesting. I thought final whistle, he was pretty much the first player bringing all the players with him over to the away end, because he knows what it means. He's celebrated as a fan these type of games, and he would, there would be an extra special sense of achievement, I think, from him tonight, that he's been part of another Norwich team who've gone to Portman Road and come back unscathed relatively.
Yeah, and I don't want to labour the point, but I guess two milestones. It was his dad was the last Norwich manager to get beat by Ipswich, whether that's any sort of consideration, but also I think a lot of Ipswich fans would point towards the moment that Brian had and the air kick and all of that stuff. So you said he just gets it. He understands the fixture and the magnitude of it, and it was a fantastic save. Adam, in terms of the bigger picture, one defeat in 7 for Norwich City. I don't think any of us are sitting here pretending that it was some miraculous performance, but it was certainly full of all of the intangible qualities that you want, and maybe that derby days are defined by often. What do you make of kind of the bigger picture and Norwich City's form at the moment? Because for as much flack as David Wagner was taking, he deserves some credit, doesn't he, for how he's kind of navigated Norwich City into this improved run of form, irrespective of maybe how they've done it.
Yeah, you sort of go back month or so, ago, and I think a lot of Norwich fans have made their mind upon him. And to be fair, at that point, probably rightfully so. The football was pretty turgid, and I'm not saying during this run it's been particularly pretty, but they've managed to get the results they required to get themselves, very far away now from the relegation battle at the bottom. Not that they really should have ever been in that situation in the first place, and the only caveat is probably you look at the fixtures on paper and they've played a lot of teams that are sort of in that lower region, lower bracket of the Championship table as opposed to the teams at the top. But that's what's coming up now. This is a really big festive period ahead for Norwich. They're actually still sort of in and around that playoff mix. Somehow they keep keeping themselves in it despite that awful run they had, sort of the late September time right through till early November. They've still managed to keep themselves in that picture. They've got players coming back from injury. Josh Sargent, we know how key he was in the early stage of the season and what David Wagner was trying to do. Wagner referenced it himself. The likes of Ben Gibson, Grant Hanley, Sorensen, so many options now that it's going to give him a little bit more. Probably you look at that bench today. I felt, at points it was kind of a bench that didn't look that strong. Maybe not a lot of options, no real sort of strikers, particularly off the bench. If Norwich would have needed to have gone and got themselves a goal, they didn't really have anyone who is a natural number 9 or even plays in the forward areas particularly. But then you're going to have Wang and Sargent hopefully back in the picture pretty soon as well. So all those things in play. Credit to David Wagner, the players, the coaching staff for what they've managed to do in recent weeks, and turning the form, getting the fans back on side, which I think you could see a little bit in the away end today. Of course, they've managed to go to Portman Road and not lose, but irrespective of that, I feel like that's kind of that result almost just was built off what we saw at sort of the final scenes at the Sheffield Wednesday game, sort of the fans applauding them there, the scenes we had at Bristol City, lots of really good moments. But for me now, it's what happens in these next kind of 5 to 10 games. They've got some really difficult trips, the likes of trips to Hull, West Brom, Leeds, Millwall's always a difficult place to go. Some really big home games against Southampton as well. I think if we see the similar sort of points haul, because it could be difficult games, but if we can see a similar sort of level of points haul and better performances maybe then with a lot of the players back, then I think this is a turning point hopefully for David Wagner in his Norwich City managerial career. But if we see more of the same and it doesn't continue maybe the way that it has done in the last 5 or 6 games, then I could see it turning pretty quickly again, unfortunately. So really big for David Wagner moving forwards, but big credit to him for what he's managed to do. And of course he's managed to keep the unbeaten run going, as we've spoken about for the last hour. So for that alone, he's earned himself a bit of credit.
Yeah, indeed. One thing, final point I wanted to speak about on the game, Marcelino Núñez. Who knew he had a long throw in him?
You've come to the wrong man here. I've probably had my head in the laptop at this point.
For Jon Rowe's second goal, it was Marcelino Núñez's long
Was it?
throw. Yes.
Well, it says in my match report Jack Stacey, so that's going to get changed when we come out of here. But that is, you're experiencing my shock firsthand.
You're experiencing that real time, yeah? That's a genuine reaction.
I am genuinely surprised by that. I thought you were going to...
I thought it was Sam McCallum in real time, so it's fine.
Well, there you go. At first, I thought you were going to reference the time when he put the result absolutely in jeopardy with a little Cruyff turn on the edge of his own box, with no defenders behind him and no cover. I thought that was maybe the most Marcelino Núñez moment I've seen for a long while, to be honest. But yeah, in all seriousness, it looks like he's actually sort of getting back to his best. I'd like to see him a bit more involved in forward areas. Good to see that he's now contributing to that from long throw-ins. But yeah, I think he could be utilised a bit further forward. But then that seems like what we're saying about literally every one of Norwich City's midfielders at the moment. So somebody's got to play that deeper role, and I think it's probably going to go under the radar a little bit, but to actually navigate a full 90 minutes against the league's... Are they the top scorers in the league?
At home, yeah.
Well, top scorers in the league at home, for 90 minutes with Gabriel Sara and Marcelino Núñez in your midfield, conceding 2, which is less than I think the average they've scored at Portman Road, is a pretty significant achievement, because neither of those has ever been a defensive midfielder before moving to Norwich, not really before David Wagner's arrival either. And for them to step up and provide the energy required to press Ipswich into not just being able to flow straight through their midfield, I thought was a pretty significant achievement. And Núñez and Sara both kept it ticking pretty well on the ball. I think Sara had a sort of quietly difficult period, maybe a month or so ago, but he seems to be back towards his best. So there are definitely individuals that are getting there. I think some have been getting away with it a little bit when we look at, there's been a lot of heat obviously on Wagner, and a lot of talk about the situation with Josh Sargent and his injury and how fitness issues have derailed the squad, but some players weren't really playing to their best levels, and I think you could probably include Núñez and Sara in some of the clubs or the team's worst performances recently. But I think both of those are examples of players who are getting back towards it. Jack Stacey I'd put in that bracket as well, of getting a little bit closer to where they were when Norwich were at their best, and it is good to see Núñez turning out those sorts of performances, because I think everybody knows the talent that he's got. He just needed to refine it a little bit, and that seems like that's what he's doing. But next time I'll pay a lot more attention to who's doing the throw-ins, because I might get asked about it on a podcast.
Did you boys realise it was Núñez?
To be fair, because the nature in Sam's defence, we are right at the back of that stand. You couldn't, unless you tracked who's coming over with the ball. I basically just saw from Shane Duffy onwards. So didn't know, didn't really care. All I know is the ball ended up in the back of the net. Poor from the keeper, I thought. I mean, he might have been slightly inside, but he's gone through him. And don't underestimate from that throw-in of epic proportions from the Chilean international, Shane Duffy, because he's ragdolled the defender and just got what might seem an
game, Shane Duffy.
Yeah, there was a goal-saving block in the first half in their best spell, and then when they started to go more direct and balls into the box, he's the sort of player. I mean, that's perfect for him as a centre back. Balls into the box, come and head it. Yeah, no, I thought he was reliable today, and yeah, had a very big impact in that Norwich goal.
Marcelino, Rory Delap, Nunez. I think that's what we'll go with. Just to end the pod on just to change direction entirely. I thought I'd raise the topic of Christmas dinners, purely because, and I'm more interested in your guys and other people's takes on this. There's a very live conversation in the Southwell clan at the moment, not led by me, I hasten to add. I'm one of the dissenters against this plan of talk of having a Christmas dinner on Christmas Eve, but not on Christmas Day. Now I'm against this plan. To reiterate, it's being led by.
What madness is that?
It's a campaign, and I will call it a campaign, an aggressive campaign, being led by my mother. I'll name and shame her, and she says basically her argument for is that it causes too much stress on Christmas Day. She wants to be out of the kitchen. She doesn't want to be cooking. She wants to enjoy it. I disagree with this. I disagree with this statement.
Can you then just bin off all the elements of Christmas, put the presents on the 22nd?
That's what I said. That's what I said. Where does this end? Where does this end?
Isn't Christmas Eve the night in day in Germany?
Yeah, that's the big
It is. It is.
Maybe that's a homage.
But I'm Southwell, not like I don't know, Schnitzel or whatever. So I just don't agree with the concept.
I will say we've had to adapt the schedule a little bit. Boxing Day is now on. A lot of the things that happen on Boxing Day now happen on Christmas Eve since I got this job.
What usually happens on Boxing Day?
Well, it's more sort of traditions, like we used to open the presents from people that aren't there. So we'd open all the presents to each other and whatever on Christmas Day, and then open the others on Boxing Day, and do like a similarly Christmassy dinner on Boxing Day as well. But now we're having like a big meal on Christmas Eve, and opening the presents from others on Christmas Eve.
So, but are you still having a Christmas dinner on Christmas Day?
Yeah. Christmas Day remains exactly the same. It's just some of the events of the 24th and 26th have had to be shifted around so that I can, do the hard work of reporting on the football for these people. So,
Adam, Christmas dinners, talk to me.
Well, I think for me, my nan's sort of cut from the Delia Smith cloth of cooking, to be honest. Honestly, it's excellent. Like, you can go to any restaurant in Norwich, and I'm quite a big connoisseur of restaurants, to be honest. But I think she's up there. Like, generally, if she was taking bookings and I had to pay, I probably would. So, like, looking forward to that Christmas Day. As for Christmas Eve, it's usually just like a more picky bits kind of buffet dinner, just nice and easy, relaxed before the big day. And of course, all the excitement of building up to what will hopefully be nice media food at West Brom on Boxing Day, which is always good usually there. So that's something to look forward to. To be fair, actually, I haven't actually had many Christmas dinners as such. Usually it feels like every single day in December, like you're going for some sort of like Christmas meal. I actually don't think I've actually had turkey yet in December. So that's nice, which maybe makes me more excited for Christmas dinner, because usually I'm getting a little bit sick of them. As much as I love them, I'm usually get to the point of Christmas, I'm just like, please, just no more turkey or no more roast dinners for a bit. So actually, looking forward to it. And of course, it's closing in now, but at least we can go into Christmas now knowing that Norwich are still unbeaten.
Can I just say, Mr. Harvey there has said he hasn't had turkey yet. I watched him eat a sandwich with turkey in it earlier. So
I meant more.
His lies. The whole podcast's a sham.
I meant more as in on the plate with vegetables. That was my point. But yes, I do take your point.
Apparently, Yorkshire puddings on a Christmas dinner is quite a controversial topic.
Can we go home?
We can.
should be in there, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Paddy, Christmas dinner before you go home.
What?
Well, before you go home, your thoughts on Christmas dinner on Christmas Day?
Well, obviously, goes without saying. It's just madness to come up with any other concepts. We've wasted 5. I could be at home now, having my Saturday night dinner.
What have you got?
God knows. It's probably in the dog now. Come on.
Indeed. Right. Let's wrap it up there. 2-2 draw for Norwich City at Portman Road. And for those looking for a winter break, I heard you can't beat the Canaries at this time of year. Thanks for watching.